Good afternoon. I'm Mary Baker-Boudissa with Project Success, and this is Kim Gauck, who is our guest from Greensburg, Indiana. So thank you for being here, Kim. And we're going to talk today a little bit about formative assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities. Could you tell us a little bit about how formative assessment has impacted your collaboration with other educators?
I think when we've started formative assessment more strategically, it makes you reach out to your peer teachers more. Before we were pretty isolated, and it's allowed us to branch out and include those students in other environments more inclusively.
So have you seen some benefits of then engaging with your peers more?
Absolutely. I learn things every day.
Good.
And my students are getting pushed further and further in their education.
So describe some of your experiences using formative assessment with students with significant cognitive disabilities.
I tend to teach one overall lesson and then cater the assessment to each student's abilities and their mode of communication. So, for example, I have students that I worked with on greater than, less than, and equal to, and some of the students could match the symbols, and some of the students could tell me verbally which symbol meant what and how to use it. So formative assessment has allowed me to push students further and then revisit skills that other students have shown they haven't been able to master yet.
Great. So can you give me any other examples?
Another example would probably be with a few of my new kids that I have this year. I had one that was completely nonverbal, and we've just continued to do the same process and working on colors and sounds and shapes. And since Christmas, now he's talking. And he's saying the sounds and the shapes and the colors and the days of the weeks and the months of the years, which I wasn't totally convinced that he didn't know because I was using formative assessment. And he could use eye gaze or he would point to the correct thing, but he wasn't verbally telling us. And since Christmas, now he's telling us.
So Kim, tell me, what resources and supports are critical in using formative assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities?
I think the core vocabulary is very important, as well as the standards. The standards give you the baseline where you start from and where you need to go. And then all teachers have it in them. They just have to be creative into how to get that student to that higher standards.
So what would you say to teachers that are struggling with finding these strategies to using formative assessment in their classrooms?
I would say be patient and use what you know, and then reach out to groups like Project Success to get more platforms where you can gain new ideas from other teachers, because sometimes somebody has this brilliant idea that because you're in the weeds and you're working, you don't always see. So leaning on those around you is the best way to grow.
So what does presumed competence mean to you, and what does that look like with your students?
To me, that's the first glance. The moment when you see a student and you have your own moment where you think you know where that student will reach. And I think the challenge is to go beyond that and understand that the kids will go much further than you expect them to go. You just have to give them the freedom to try. And in my room, that can be from, I've used an example before of a student, when I first met him, was in a feeding tube in a wheelchair, and my assumption of where he could go was limited. And we've allowed him to push forward, and now he's communicating with us, and he's feeding himself for the first time ever as a third grader. I think it's just allowing them the chance, because if we set those limits and we stop ourselves from reaching higher, then they'll stop.
So what's something that you would do day one with a student that you hadn't encountered before to demonstrate that you're presuming competence in that student?
Well, my grade level, we do a lot of formative play too. So I might just get blocks on the floor and see if my kid will stack them or knock them down or interact with me, make eye gaze with me. All of those are all ways of me understanding where they're at So in my room, that would be the very first place I would go with some of them. My older ones, I can do assessments like easy CBMs and things like that that can give me a grade equivalent of where they are. So I know where to go from there as well.
Kim, thank you so much for being with me today and talking about formative assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities.